some point, but there it is. All right, cool. I think once it, yeah, I knew it'd take a few minutes to set it all up. So good call to do that early, Jay. There we go. Welcome to a very special edition of Film Strip Podcast. I am Jay and am excited to be here with my good buddy Phil from Phil at the Movies to talk about the worldwide phenomenon that is Christopher Nolan's The Odyssey. And we're doing something a little different tonight, going live here on the YouTube. Haven't done this in a number of years. So if you're joining us, thanks. And if you're watching this later, thanks again. And do share whether you're watching the video or the audio in your socials. We appreciate it. We'll get into all of that. As I said, very different from what we usually do here on Film Strip. This will not be your standard review, nor will it be your standard sessions. But spoilers will be live tonight, so be aware. And first spoiler is Phil and I love this movie and are going to give it an extra large popcorn. So just be prepared because we're here to gush over the triumphant return of Christopher Nolan to the theater. It's hard to say that after he raked the Oscars 2 years ago, but yeah, Phil, welcome back to the show, please. And first off, applause to the work that you've been doing for the better part of a year leading up to this. So please introduce yourself to folks that maybe it's their first time catching you and tell a little bit about that background.
Well, Jay, thank you for having me on tonight. I could think of no better person to have this discussion with, so I'm looking forward to it immensely. But yeah, like Jay, I mentioned at the start, I have a weekly show, Phil at the Movies. Uh, Primarily for the last really 12 weeks, it's been leading up to the release of my most anticipated film of the year. Been doing a retrospective on Christopher Nolan's films. Jay, you were a guest where we talked about The Prestige, and it was a lot of fun. It was, with I think maybe
Mhm.
one or two exceptions, it was all filled shows with no pun intended. All shows with guests, and we just had a blast. Honestly, revisiting his films, my order of things sort of changed as I was going through this retrospective, which was a lot of fun and surprising even in some cases. But yeah, I mean, this was a lot of work. Frankly, it ran over the last 12 weeks, but it, like you said, Jay, it really has been the better part of a year, sort of just the lead up and getting all
Mhm.
the shows recorded and kind of, psyching myself up as much as humanly possible. But
Yeah.
it was a great road to the Odyssey. Let me say this, and it all paid off in great dividends last week.
Indeed, it did. And, you and I have been talking about this movie for, like I say, since it was announced, and both of us like Nolan's work. We have different things that we like from his filmography, which I think is always
Mhm.
fun. It was one of my most favorite things about that series that you ran were all the different perspectives you got from your podcast compadres and film buffs and stuff to come and talk about.
Mhm.
Um, all the things that they enjoyed about a particular movie, whether that be Dark Knight or, you had me on, like I said, for Prestige, which is one that I hold near and dear and feels like is getting reevaluated now, and I'm glad to hear that. I think more people go back to it, but it's always good to hear somebody else talk about how awesome Tenet is,
I,
which I can never get enough of. Because it is, and
we're,
you all
we're
should
we're
get there.
growing in numbers. We're
We
growing in
are. I mean,
numbers.
we are going to get there. That is for sure. But no, I really did enjoy that, and moreover, it was just fun to know that you were so excited about
Yeah.
something like that, and for me to get it and go like, no, I understand why. I mean,
Yeah.
this is the kind of movie you get excited about, and you know, I just at the top, Phil, it's hard to think about the last time that we had like a cultural cinematic touchstone. And it probably was Barbenheimer. It was the Barbie Oppenheimer, duo a couple of years ago. And as kitschy and fun as that was, and as wildly different as those films are from one another, I did enjoy that. But I feel like we got two of those this year, really two. We got two movements of it. You got the Backrooms obsession,
Yeah.
indie low budget horror took over the
Yeah.
early part of the summer,
Yeah.
and now you've got this. And I remember them growing up and being a part of those kind of things where everybody saw something. And I think really the first time I can really remember it as a teenager and stuff was Terminator 2.
Oh, sure.
When that came out, everyone who was reading Entertainment Weekly or anything at the time thought there's no way this movie's going to work. It's $100 million. Are you insane? And then of course it was you couldn't escape it, and it was in theaters forever, and still works to this day. But I remember that distinctly, and as I was thinking about this and coming out of watching this movie, when I saw it, the couple of times I got to see it, I was thinking about like when did I remember something being so a part of the culture that you couldn't escape it, and that was kind of where I ran back to. But more recently, those were some of my memories of that. What about for you?
Certainly, this is the closest thing to a Barbenheimer type event,
Hmm.
um, in the last 3 years, sort of in recent context. You know, I am certainly going to be showing my Nolan bias here, but for me, both the lead up to this film and then actually seeing the film and then watching the reaction that it has gotten from audiences all over the world,
Hmm.
it brought me back 18 years ago now to another Nolan film, The Dark Knight. And again,
Yeah.
totally different movies in a lot of ways, but similar in some respects as well. That was This movie felt the closest to that cinematic high that I felt all those years ago, and in many ways have been sort of chasing ever since. And not that there haven't been big films and sort of semi-cultural touchstone moments, but
Hmm.
when I sort of think back in my own time and what really captivated my imagination, The Dark Knight is what is probably the closest comparison I can bring to this film right here.
And that's an excellent one too. Yeah, I remember when that happened and have told the story on Film Strip and in other places too, that the first time I saw The Dark Knight, it didn't land for me.
I remember you said that.
I loved Batman Begins, and then I walked out of that going, no, no. And it was Ron from Film Strip, his wife Holly, who I've been friends with for most of my life, said, no, you need to watch this again. You need to give it another shot. It's the Empire Strikes Back of Batman movies. To which I said, okay, I didn't wasn't really sure that was where we were going to go with this, but okay. And then I went back and watched it again, and I did get more out of it. And then I also someone else had told me, because they know I'm a big fan of Heat,
Hmm.
that hey, Nolan loves Heat, and like you should watch this, thinking he did Heat with Batman in it or with Joker in it. And when I watched it like that, I was like, oh, and of course now I love it,
Right.
and have ever since. But I remember that, yeah, it was a big moment, and the Dark
Yeah.
Knight Rises, of course, was too. But
Yeah.
I happen to have been around when Inception hit. Nolan's had a lot of these sort of
I,
marking points
I know.
through his career, and some more than others. But this one, it was such a bold idea to go with. As we know, I mean, it's what arguably our third oldest story. You got the Bible, Gilgamesh, and this.
Yeah.
And from those three things, everything else comes. I mean, that's only a
Nolan
guy like Nolan would go, yeah, let's do one of those.
going for a deep cut here.
Yeah.
No, I mean, I remember when this was announced, I immediately was in because, again, I mean, Christopher
Yeah.
Nolan could direct a film where he just stands and reads the phone book for 3 hours and shoots it in IMAX, and I'd be there.
Mhm.
But I remember there was some confusion, or not, maybe not confusion was the word, but I think for a lot of people, this seemed like the opposite of what Nolan would do next. You know what I mean?
Right.
It seemed so far out of left field,
Oh.
and I got it right away. I was like, okay, this makes sense, particularly when you look at a lot of his films, but particularly over the last half a decade. There's definitely a through line that you can see where you
Mhm.
go from Dunkirk, Tenet, Oppenheimer, and now obviously to the Odyssey.
I think you can go all the way back to the beginning, and even with the remake of Insomnia, which is
Sure.
a remake,
Yep.
his protagonists
Mm.
are conflicted men
Yeah.
who
Yep.
have to make the hard decision
Yep.
and then have to live with it.
Yeah.
Like that's the through line of every Nolan
Yeah.
film and every protagonist in his
Co
films.
Cosign.
And I think and I found that how that has evolved through the years fascinating for him to keep retelling that, over and over. And as we get into this one, to try to keep the thing, manageable in some way,
Right,
I
right.
did come up with some points and some questions and stuff that we'll just banty back and forth. But a lot
Yeah.
of this is one of my favorite things to do for people off the pot is to get on a thing like this with Phil or just in text message, just ask Phil really interesting questions because he can just go with it. And so I'm going to pick your brain, my friend. I really want to know here. So watching this,
Yeah.
and specifically this film and this adaptation of it,
Yeah.
I came away with the question of is Odysseus a hero or is he a survivor?
So I have really pondered this one because he is not a hero in the classic sense. This is not a Robin Hood type figure or someone that we might associate with great heroics or a sense of moral clarity. He is certainly a survivor based on what he endures throughout his journey and of course his eventual homecoming.
Mm,
But I sort of see it as he's the classic morally gray hero, where in some sense, yes, this guy is a master tactician, he's a strategist, he's a soldier, he's a fighter, but he is also a deeply conflicted man. This is somebody with, just put in modern context, has a tremendous amount of baggage and is sort of inundated and weighted down by all the decisions he has made. And so, in a lot of ways, he's kind of the best sort of almost anti-hero in a way because there's not there is a sense of right and wrong to a degree, but it's not as black and white as say well, to put it in modern context, a Superman-like
mm.
figure. He's very much he's I think by the end of the film you might say there's more clarity, if you will, where he has a sense of his priorities, but throughout the piece, he's truly a conflicted individual, and that only gets exacerbated as his challenges and flaws, if you will, are exposed and rear their ugly heads.
I put a lot of this on the way that Matt Damon and the choices he made in the portrayal this time. And he's a little bit older than me, but not much. He's my generation,
Mhm.
and we grew up in the tail end of the anti-hero 70s, your Popeye
Sure.
Doyles, your Dirty
Yep.
Harrys,
Right.
all
Charles
those
Bronson. Yeah.
Charles Bronson, all those
Yep.
characters who were doing quote the right thing, but they had to go about it in a way that wasn't always pretty,
Right.
because and there's something about that in all kinds of, war films
Oh
of any
yeah.
kind is that it's not a pretty business,
No.
and that's the choice you make,
Yep.
and
Yep.
we have to do those things, or at least that's the where we are in the world and the society. And then
Right.
you put it back in something like the Bronze Age. And what I've
Mm.
been just amused by is that the number of people online going like, man, it took them 10 years to get through the wall. I'm like, you got to remember there's no such thing as artillery. Like, all
Right.
they know is run with a sword and a
Right.
spear. But I love that inside of that, Damon found this tactician because
Yeah.
it's on the page, it's in all the source and
Oh
stuff. And,
yeah.
and that's the cool thing about Odysseus is that not only is he a great fighter, but he's really smart,
Yeah.
and he may be the smartest of them,
Yeah.
when it comes down to it, which is why Agamemnon wanted him there. I
Correct.
mean, he kind of got drafted into this. He had to draft his guys into it from Ithaca, and they've been at this for 10 years.
Hmm.
And there's a lot of different ways of looking at it,
Oh,
but in the classical sense, he's not a hero, not in the truest sense. He's someone who has to do heroic things from a point of view, but he is definitely a survivor of a very conflicted moment and through things. And I found that to be so neat to watch. And he represents, and I think Nolan really is interested in this. And you talked about it really this last four films, Dunkirk,
hmm.
Tenet, Oppenheimer, and here, all of those lead characters are people that have had to survive some pretty horrific stuff.
Right. No, and again, with that comes it comes wisdom, but it also comes at a tremendous cost.
Right.
Again, to tie it back to Odysseus, you don't stay on a beach for a decade without things going astray. I mean, like no, like you are not going to be the same person you were when you landed on that beach. And
No.
again, look at what happens in Dunkirk, or in the case of the protagonist in Tenet, certainly look at Oppenheimer. I mean, there's
Mhm.
a wonderful through line to watch all of these lead characters be saddled with the consequence of X, Y, or Z decision and how they start off at point A, and by the time they get to point Z, they're almost completely different people.
Right. And I think that's what's bold about this is that the movie doesn't choose to admire Odysseus for these
No.
choices rather than just to present him. We've got someone in the chat here, Emily, who agrees with us that Odysseus is not a hero. So appreciate that as we go along. But no, I think the kind of heroism that he possesses is the fact that he did survive. And there's that old adage that history's told by the victors.
Yeah.
Were they the right ones? Well, according to them, they were. So, you know.
Well, no, I mean, he even says it at the end.
Mhm,
Eventually, future generations will
mhm.
forget all of their mistakes. I mean, again, he's sort of banking on that very point. The victor writes the history book.
Yeah, exactly. But I love the fact that he is at all times trying to remain in control of all those faculties.
Yeah.
And that's what's so fun to watch Damon work through. And in pure Nolan fashion, we're bouncing through the timeline a lot, as you knew
Oh
you were
yeah.
going to get.
Oh
But
yeah.
but I like that, and
It
and it
works so well
it
here.
does. It really does. And I'll be honest. Like when they said, okay, Matt Damon is going to be Odysseus, I was like, okay, that's a choice. I've seen Damon put on some
Oh yeah.
great performances. I've also seen him do some stuff where I'm like, okay,
What you doing,
but
Matt?
yeah, but hey, look, he's had a great career,
Yeah.
but he's a consummate professional. That's what I appreciate about him.
Yeah.
And then when I thought about it, I said, no, this is exactly right. We don't have a lot of everyman actors anymore.
Well, that bingo. When he was announced, because certainly you could see at another point in time someone like Christian Bale or maybe even Robert Downey Jr. Or pick somebody out, Matthew McConaughey,
Hmm.
being Odysseus, and that would sort of be more to type, if you will.
Hmm.
And I love that this was in many ways against type, but I think Damon was the only person who could have played this version of Odysseus in this particular adaptation.
And because he's so good at playing complicated characters. I mean, he's
Exactly.
always enjoyed playing them.
Right.
Probably his most famous one is Will Hunting, which is a character he wrote with Ben Affleck, of course, but he would understand it from that point of view. So that's why I think he's so good. I mean, I remember the movie Rounders. I don't know if you remember that one or not.
Oh, vaguely.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he's so good in that as sort of the
Yep.
street poker player, and stuff
Yeah.
like that. And I'm like, if you think of Odysseus in some way as a hustler, because he is, um, this totally works because Matt Damon's a hustler, and the thing you got to know is that hustlers survive, you
They
know,
they do. No,
yeah,
they
and
always do.
yeah, and his crew are hustlers, a
Yeah.
lot of ways. Like these dudes are rough and tumbles, and
Yeah.
I don't know. I think it was neat, and it's just so neat to watch that character sort of work out through all of this, and then also to arrive at a point when we get to the trial of the bow
Yeah.
at the end, and what goes down, and what is. John Wick fans, eat your heart out. Is one of the coolest things with a bunch of bows and arrows and spears in a small room. And to hear Tom Holland tell the tale of it, that would take, we can do those things in a Marvel movie and it takes 3 weeks. He said, Nolan did it in a day and a half. And he said, and I was just blown away by that. He said, but then again, I wasn't because at that point we'd been doing this so long that,
Right.
everybody kind of knew what to do. And we'll get to the rest
Oh
of the
yeah.
cast in a bit, but and it's not just Matt Damon,
Oh no, no.
but it all culminates in that moment.
Again, in many ways, the film would rise or fall on his performance,
No.
and it really
Mhm.
does just tie together beautifully. And you, of course, see it
Does.
in that moment, but it's the choices he makes leading up to that. And I'm
Oh.
speaking as the acting choices.
Hmm.
Again, I mean, it's already been made a great discussion just in the last 4 days, but the scene with the sirens and
Yeah.
just again the reaction there. I mean, if Damon is nominated for anything, I imagine that will be the
I,
the
I
the,
think
the
that
clip that makes
speech,
the round and the
yeah,
exactly
yeah,
and the
that speech at
speech.
the end will be the one where he talks about it's everything you could ever want,
Yeah.
but you don't want it anymore. And it was every promise I had made and broke, and
Yeah.
that I didn't really want to go home.
Yeah.
That whole idea of like what he's wrestling with. It's that internal bit, and that's a good segue into kind of talking about the monsters of the Odyssey, which are as famous as the story in a lot of ways. They
Yeah.
yeah, and some of them aren't even really from the story, but I'm a fan. I'll just say this from the beginning: when something gets adapted from one medium to the next, adapt away, friend. Do what you want, And I had heard early on that Nolan was using this very specific translation as the model for
Yeah.
what he did, and I'm glad I read it because it's been since high school, and I got a lot from it. But I also realized first time watching this that like Nolan may have looked at that, but he also just said, "I've seen a lot of Odyssey movies, so I'm just going to write all of them in one thing." To get to the point I want to go to. And part of that is the monsters. And I wanted to throw something at you that having thought about this for a few days,
Mhm.
having seen the movie a couple times now, I think every creature represents like the last temptation of Odysseus in some ways.
I
You
would agree
know,
with that. Yeah.
like Polyphemus, the Cyclops is just being a brute soldier,
Yeah.
you know.
A
And
beast.
yeah, Circe is comfort in what it costs you.
Right.
And the sirens are obsession
Hmm.
and broken promises, and
Yeah.
Poseidon is wounded pride and in the price for lying.
Right.
you know and
Big
then
time.
the suitors, particularly Antonius, Robert Pattinson,
Right.
just a killer performance too.
Chef's kiss.
Yeah, we're gonna get to that dude in a minute.
Yeah.
It's all about like just the entitlement of all of it. Like they are these gritty soldiers, but he's also a king.
Yeah.
At a time when we don't we think of kings now because kings still exist. They really are removed, as far removed. Our leadership is as far removed from the front lines of anything military as you can get anymore these days.
Right.
Um,
Right.
this was at a time when that was not it, and I liken it more to, goodness help me for going on my Kubrick rant here, but it's a lot like Colonel Dax in Passive Glory, the way that Kirk
Okay.
Douglas
Yeah.
plays it. I don't
Yeah.
know if you ever thought about it. Douglas, who was also in Ulysses, another
Yeah.
adaptation of this, has said he sort of felt like this belonged that movie was a little bit of a Greek mythology anyway. But I don't know if
Yeah.
you saw it that way or not.
No, now that you mention it, yeah, I can see that comparison.
Mhm. But in the point of all these things, and what I was trying to get at, I'll set you up for this, is in having to get around all of those monsters, he's having to beat part of his own ego or his own past.
Oh, sure. Oh, no. I mean, in many ways, the monsters are a manifestation of every decision he's made, every wrong he
Mm.
has committed. And again, there is the literal aspect of the journey home and over, vanquishing or getting away from X, Y, or Z monster. But there's also the more figurative journey, the rediscovery of oneself, the airing of personal demons, if you will. And that's what I think each of those characters represent in a lot of ways. I mean, just take the Cyclops as an example. You see at the end of it where he takes the arrow and he shoots it. Like he didn't have to do that. They were
No, he
already
did it
free and
anyway.
clear, but he
Yeah.
did it anyway. Again, that's sort of the, that
Hmm.
soldier mentality, like, you killed my men, I'm going to kill you kind of a thing.
Hmm.
And again, just take it to Cersei's point. She has the eyes fashioned by the gods. She can see truth, and I think there's that uncomfortable part of him where in some ways, I think he always knows deep down what the answer is, but he's a smartass. He likes to think he can know better than the gods, and of course, you know what happens when you think you know better than the gods. The
Yeah.
wrath of thunder. But there is that hubris, and in
Hmm.
many ways, that's really the through line that
Yeah.
that carries. I mean, again, when they tie him to the mass, and he's like, there or Hamish Patel's is like, you can't do that. You'll die. Well, that's fine. I'll be the first. I won't die. Like, I mean, he's
Hmm.
so full of himself.
Yes.
It really is to a fault. But it's in many ways he's so sincere in his hubris that in many ways, like, you kind of want to see where he goes through with it to the very end. That's a
Yeah.
very odd combination because usually someone who is so arrogant, you're just sort of waiting for them to trip on their own feet. But
Yeah.
uh, Odysseus does it in a way where it's almost like it's matter of fact. It's part of his DNA in
Well, I
a
mean,
way.
we go back to Matt Damon again, and just think about some of his key performances in his career. And I'm just going to pull two out that are vastly different from each other. Will Hunting
Yep.
knows he's the smartest guy in the room.
Hmm.
He knows it for a fact, and it
Yep.
kind of enjoys proving it to
Yeah.
people. When it suits his will, right?
Right.
And then flash forward years later, where he's playing a bit of a character, but a real person opposite Christian Bale in a great movie called Ford versus Ferrari.
Oh yeah.
Matt Damon nailed Carol Shelby in a way that Carol Shelby's family was like, he doesn't look anything like Dad, but he sounds a lot like him, and he's got all of his swagger. And Damon really did get that guy where he, there's those scenes where I think he gets, the VP of Ford or whatever and scares him half to death driving that car around the track. And then he just stops and he says, "Now look, I know what I'm talking about. Do you believe me now?" I'm thinking of this while I'm watching him give this performance, and I'm going, it's all leading to this
Right.
point, and I'm like, yeah, this, and it just goes back again. You've got a great cast in there, and with what he wants to do, but when you mentioned something about the gods and not tempting the gods, and that's what's so neat about Nolan's version of this is that they are on the periphery of this
Yes.
story in a lot of ways. Really, Athena is the one that gets any kind of real time in the story. And
And then even that's done in a very subtle and kind of a subversive way,
yeah,
which
and
we,
and
we, we
we'll
can get to that. Yeah.
yeah, we're going to get to that because we both texted each other
Yeah.
about that and sort of when that revealed to us and when we saw it. But there's that and the force of Poseidon and the result of Helios and all these things. What they could do was always around him, but they weren't part of the in the Odyssey. They drive a lot of the story. There's a
Right.
whole part of it, and I think it was so neat of Nolan to go like, yeah, we're going to acknowledge that that's there, but this is really about this man and all the damage he has done,
Mhm.
that he is doing, and that he will endure to get to where he wants to go. And even though we're going to go, why are you doing this? We're also going to find a way to root for him,
Right.
and that's the genius in the way that this is put together.
And I would just make a point about because you mentioned the gods and sort of the lack thereof, if you will, in terms of an actual representation.
Mhm.
I think that is probably one of this film's like hidden secret qualities
Mhm.
because in many a version, this would have been a major narrative point
Mhm.
where Poseidon or whoever, the gods would, I mean, they're central to the story.
Yeah.
And so this is putting us in the context, nobody sees God, like nobody
Mhm.
sees the God. So like,
But the influence is there.
that's again,
Yeah, Zeus's
thunder,
law, all that.
exactly.
Yeah.
You have
Mhm.
that sort of that always looking over your shoulder mentality. And
Mhm.
that to me, I think is much more effective than if we just sort of, cut away to Zeus, coming down or something.
Mhm. It's worth noting that Nolan is Catholic or grew up Catholic,
Yeah.
and there's a lot of that in his work,
Oh,
particularly when it relates to morality and
yeah,
like you said, that looking over your shoulder,
yeah.
kind of thing, and how people deal with that, and he
And
doesn't make
blind
a lot of
faith.
yeah, he doesn't make a ton of outward statements about it, but it's very much that like it's there and you deal with it. Each protagonist deals with it a little differently.
Right.
Um, but then we've talked about how Nolan's obsessed with time, and he always is. He will be until he is done with time.
Right.
And I find that fun. But time in mythology and how he works with it, where he makes waiting an action. And I thought about that, and I thought I've never seen someone waiting around be more action oriented in my life.
I know. No,
Yeah.
seriously, this felt like all of his flirtations,
Mhm.
embrace of time or non-linear storytelling really came to fruition in the best way.
Mhm.
I think you couldn't tell this story in a straightforward manner. You certainly
No.
couldn't tell it the way it is organized in Homer's poem. It's much more drawn out and
No.
very sequential. Whereas I think the way this works, where you have, in some cases, 10 years earlier or 10 years later or 6 years before or 2 weeks ago or right then and there, it it works because this is such a massive, sprawling text. I think to do it any kind of justice, you
Mhm.
have to move pieces around a little bit. And
Oh
that's
yeah.
again where I think Nolan's flourish for time manipulation, if you will,
Mhm.
really pays its dividends, because this is the kind of work where you can flirt with it in a way
Mhm.
that makes it, like you said, the act of waiting is a Herculean task that pays off.
Yeah. And no character bears the weight of that more emotionally than Anne Hathaway's Penelope to
Yep,
me.
I would
Um,
agree.
she smolders in this role. Can we just? I mean, I walked out of. I mean, I've been an Anne Hathaway fan since eons ago. I've always thought she had such great chops. I saw her in a movie relatively early in her adult career, if you'll call it, a movie called Rachel Getting Married.
Oh yeah,
I liken it to when Kirsten Dunst did this movie called Crazy Beautiful, where they both just really stepped out of what they were known for to
right.
do something interesting. And it was like, oh, they can really act. And
Yeah,
I mean, she's turned in, award-winning performances. And whether she's in a a sequel to a silly rom-com,
right,
or she's doing musical period piece, or she's doing space movies, whatever, man.
right.
Or when they cast her as Catwoman, I was like, yeah, I can kind of see it. And then I saw it, and I was like, I mean, and this may be unpopular opinion. It's the best part of The Dark Knight Rises is her story, in my opinion. I love what she is in that.
She's underrated.
Yeah, she really is. But to see her get to do this because the Penelope character is so interesting,
Hmm.
and that's been a knock on Nolan forever is he doesn't write female characters good, right? Like and you and I don't agree with
No,
that.
no, yeah,
But that's been one of those things that's sort of the lazy thing to throw at him because
yeah,
it was he's so similar to Kubrick in some
yeah.
ways, though he's a lot more frenetic than Kubrick, but
Oh,
but
big time.
which is fun. This is what makes him fun. But getting Anne Hathaway, who clearly 1000% understood what she was supposed to do here, was just so neat. And it was really the second time through that I got it. It's like Penelope is experiencing a completely different movie than the rest of us.
Correct.
Yeah.
No, I call her, she is both the heart of the film, but she is the steel spine. And it's
Mm,
a wonderful marriage of those two ideas. And you could have done a whole film just told from her point of view,
yeah.
because, like you said, she's experiencing a whole different story than what is going on
Mm.
outside the castle. And
Yeah.
I find that to be endlessly fascinating, because a lot of what Anne does in this film, yeah, she's got a lot of great moments and speeches, and again, her, Odysseus, where she, screams that in Tom Holland's face, like that's
Hmm.
award winning in my opinion. But a lot of it is just her, what she does with her eyes, and
Mm.
particularly in the scene where Pattinson is trying to put the moves on her and basically, seek her hand in marriage. a lot of it is just her
Mhm.
reacting to him, and you can see what she has been going through for 20 plus years. It is, I mean, she says it at the end with Odysseus, she's been living in his ruins for far too long. And you
Yeah.
see that in her expression, in her glances. And to me, when an actor can convey that kind of cascade of emotion and
Mhm.
history with just a simple stare or a frown, that to me is much more powerful than 20 pages of monologue.
Well, like you said, she's the steel spine of this
Hmm.
movie, and she is of the household.
Yeah.
And it comes through in that steely gaze that Anne Hathaway has. I mean, she
Hmm.
really can turn those big doe eyes hard,
Oh, yeah.
and is such a good face actor, and with tone and
Hmm.
all of those. I mean, those scenes she has with Pattinson, particularly when she's at the loom and he's told her
Yeah.
like, I know you unravel it every night, and he outs her, but she never blinks.
No.
I was like, that's. And it hit me as I was thinking about it, is that we both agree she's the emotional center of this
Yeah.
film in a ways, but this is parallel stories of endurance crossing to meet
Yeah.
each other.
Yeah.
I mean, it really is because she is on her own journey. Because it's hard to even imagine the idea of all of these people show up at your house and they don't leave for 10 years,
Yeah.
15 years. How long have they been there?
Yeah.
And they're wasting your life and resources. And you can't kick them out because that's not how it's done.
Right.
So what do you do? And it's, I mean, there's tons of cinematic equivalents, but I think about like the way like Melanie and Scarlett operate in Gone with the Wind,
Oh, sure.
and I don't know if you've ever thought about it or not, but even when Scarlett doesn't want to, she keeps up that air of hospitality, and thinks because it's what she's expected to do. And this is another woman in a situation where, I mean, she has that great, fire brand at Tom Holland. It looks like he legitimately got scared of
Yeah.
her, and I would be too. Where she says like, it's not like this is all still going because I've been here. This is not
Right.
an empty throne, And I
Yeah.
love that she owns that without beating you over the head with it, because
Right.
you can do that in a movie, and that's been done in movies. And this is so much more subtle and so much more earned, in my opinion.
It is because, again, that's part of the greatness of the way the film was organized, because we get to see glimpses of who Penelope was prior to Odysseus leaving.
Yeah.
And it's not a lot, but it's just enough to show who she was and then contrast that with where we find her. And I mean, again, she's the quintessential good host, but I mean,
Yeah.
at some point, everybody has their limits. I mean, again,
Hmm.
when she's having that back and forth with Tom about, set fire to the house. Like, she's not
Hmm.
just throwing out words there. She means that with a passion,
Yeah.
and you can feel the 20 years of resentment and hate that is just spilling over at that point.
Right. And she's ready to explode. I mean, you think about it like in the chat here, Emily brings up like Queen Elizabeth I has to run this kingdom, but do it from her place.
Right.
And I immediately thought of like Eleanor Roosevelt.
Eleanor
When
Roosevelt, Edith
FDR got sick.
Wilson.
Yeah, Edith
Yeah.
Wilson. Edith Wilson's a great one. Yes, exactly. And in our just in American history, there's several like very powerful women,
Oh, sure.
who've kept us going. And then just think back a film before to Katie Oppenheimer.
Yeah.
You know,
Another steel spine.
exactly. Oh yeah, and oddly enough, played by two best friends. So, I think no one knows how to pick them. But
Just
well,
a little bit.
he has his roster. I mean, and
He
that's good.
does.
Every good director should. But I love that though about her that she has such a like you say, a steel presence,
Mhm.
but is also in the context of the moment and things. And I wanted to ask you something, and because I know how it's written. I just read it the second time around. When the climax happens and he plucks the bow and shoots the arrow, is that when she knows that's him? Because I think she figures it out the night before when she's having that speech with the beggar.
Yes, I think she knows it's him. And again,
She's just waiting for him to.
it's kind of
Mhm.
that's just that's that knowing reassurance. But
Right.
no, but he even says it when he's talking with Telemachus about like,
Mhm.
you're not gonna have a weapon. He's like, oh, I'll have a weapon. Your mother will see to that. Like
Yeah, I caught that the second time too,
they're
and I was
both
like,
they're in on it.
yeah,
Like,
because I remembered from the story, like she's the one that comes up with the beggar's disguise,
yeah,
for him. So like, like she's in on it, but the fact that she plays it
she plays it down to the
like
wire.
she's not is so cool,
It
and
is.
it's so well done.
Well, and it also speaks to sort of that point of endurance that you mentioned
Hmm.
earlier about even separated by 20 years. And again,
Yeah.
you know, you put this in the context of the time and place. No, there's no photos, people. There's no, recordings, but like if
Hmm.
you truly love somebody that much, no matter the
Yeah.
distance, no matter the time, you're going to know when your person is
Yeah.
there.
Well, Phil,
You're in
there's
sync.
there's not even messaging
No,
to
no
get to
letters.
Ithaca from Troy.
No.
She has no idea. It's just pure faith
Hmm.
because she knows Odysseus.
Yep. No,
You
that's
know, and
power of
that's
love.
yeah, exactly. Yeah. And that's I mean, that's really true. We need to talk about a lot of the supporting characters, or I want
Yeah.
to talk about a lot of the supporting characters here.
Phenomenal, phenomenal
I mean, just
ensemble.
top to bottom, yeah, everybody here rocks. Telemachus, uh, um, Tom Holland. I've seen him do. I mean, I got introduced to him like everybody else with Spider-Man,
Yeah.
but I really figured out he could act when I saw him opposite Robert Pattinson.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm blanking on the name of the movie. So somebody was to chat. It's like the devil all the time or
Yeah,
something like
yeah, the
that.
devil. Yeah, he plays.
Yeah,
Pattinson plays the
the
like religious nut,
yeah,
basically.
the
Yeah,
the the
the
fake wandering preacher or whatever,
yeah,
but it's deep
yeah.
south. But watching him do that, yeah, it never blows me away that Brits can do good Southern accents
I,
because we're just the slower version of that, language anyway. But when I saw him do that, I was like, oh, this kid can act. I say kid, he's
I,
so much younger than me. I was like, this kid can really act. Like he's good. And then he's in this role where he's constantly seeking someone he doesn't know. He's
yeah,
having to live up to this father that he's only ever heard stories of and songs about.
yeah,
He's never met him. He doesn't know him, not in the way he would know anybody else, mentor
right.
or even, Menelaus, any of these are the people he encounters. And but in the same light, he is exactly Odysseus' son.
Yeah,
And he's Penelope's son too. He is a great
yes.
combination of the two. And I thought that performance really came through.
I knew Tom would be a perfect match with Nolan because Nolan has that ability to take actors who people might normally think, oh, what?
Yeah.
Spider-Man, yeah, that won't work. But he, again, it's the power of Nolan. He is, I knew he would be good. He really surprised me with how phenomenal his performance was because
Mhm.
especially when you watch his arc, because he really does go from the the boy seeking the approval of the father who's never been there
Mhm.
to then becoming his father's son and his mother's son. Like it's a wonderful transition, and it starts with Menelaus, but it finishes when he finally meets
Mhm.
with Odysseus, or as the beggar, if you will, and you watch that boy become a man, and it's a very again, a lot of it is in the subtleties, but you
Mhm.
really see it pay off in dividends, especially at that banquet sequence.
Oh, 100%. And when he goes up into when the Logan Marshall Green in kind of a thankless role
Yeah.
there, throwing
The
weapons down in there, and he
spears,
goes in there
yeah.
and gets in a great fight with him, and they have a great close quarters fight. I mean, I enjoyed every minute of that. We won't get to talk about him much. I don't have much to say, but John Barenthal's tremendous in the small scenes that he's in, but not
Instantly memorable.
surprised. But the dude's just a really
Great act.
talented actor. I liken him to the modern day Richard Gere. I feel like he's
Huh.
got a lot of Richard's
Well,
um,
that's a good
steely
comparison.
confidence, but
Yeah.
without being super alpha.
Right.
He is, but he doesn't have to say it. He just is.
Yeah.
He's got
He just exists.
presence.
Yeah.
He's got presence and stuff. We got to talk about our pets. Um, Antonius.
One of
When
my
I
favorites of
read
the whole film.
that he said he based this character on Lester Diamond, James Woods' character from Casino, I said, "Say less. I know what you're going to do." And then I
Yep.
saw it, and I was like, "Son of a gun, he really
He
did.
went there. He went
Yeah,
there.
he really did. He is so. I mean, he's such a chameleon as a
It-
performer anyway." And I've seen him play everything in between, and we'll continue to get to, hopefully. He's just so fun. And he looks like he's having such a good time being the villain, you
well,
know?
no, again, there is one role that is required in this film to be the hammy one,
Yeah.
and he does it. And it's never over the top. It's not campy, but it's just enough where he gets to rip it, and
Yeah.
it's
We,
you can't help
mhm.
but hate him because like he's just so deliciously evil. I mean, just the way he speaks, plate liquor and the way just the
The way he
words
says
roll up.
beggars, can we
Oh,
get these beggars out of here?
it's
I was
like,
like,
oh,
oh, that is, but there's also moments too when he does his Edward from Twilight thing, where
yeah,
he's being very sentimental and
yep,
he's being honest. He's
yeah,
going, there's two times he does it. He says, you know, he's not coming back,
yep.
and you're just putting us off. And all these others out here, they're losers. You don't want them, and you can tell that's the Lester Diamond. He's like such a snake, but he's just putting on that charm, just that
Yep.
sweetness a little bit. And then when he's trying to get out of the bow thing, like obviously the Queen's proved her point. Nobody's
Yep.
going to be your husband. We're not trying to replace him, but you got to move on. Ithaca's too
Right.
big. Yeah, he's trying to be reasonable, but you realize like this is the most selfish son of a bitch in the whole movie.
He is. It's awful.
Yeah, but he's so good at
He's
it.
no,
And he deserves he deserves a nomination, I believe, for
I would
best
agree.
supporting.
Yeah, I think,
Probably
I
won't
mean,
win, but I think he at least
no,
deserves the nod.
he
So
should. No, I mean, the guy, he never turns in even a mediocre performance. He's
mhm.
always on point, and frankly, he needs to play more villains
Yeah,
because
he's good at it.
he's
Yeah.
very
I
good.
I told you before when we were talking Tenet, I think he would be a hell of a Bond villain. I think
Oh,
he would be a
yes.
tremendous James Bond
Yes.
villain. So I know they're trying to cast Bond right now, but they need to talk about the villain.
I'm telling you,
So
give it to Bob.
if you
Give it to
don't give
Bob.
it to him or Idris Elba, then I don't know what you're doing. But
I know, right?
those are my two choices. But that's another day on
Yeah.
Donahue. Um, we got to talk about Eumaeus and what John Leguizamo does as the most loyal character in all of literature.
Seriously.
Has to be just
Loyal to the end.
yeah, with no glory.
No.
He's a servant. You
Yeah.
know, but he's also the movie's moral compass in a lot of ways.
Which you need. You
Yeah.
need someone to be that true north. He is that in this film.
Yeah.
And I love that that was a change that Nolan made with the character by making him blind.
Yeah.
Because again, sort of having that blind faith, the person,
Mhm.
again, that's a classic trope in film and literature, the person that can't see but actually does see, sees everything.
He's a lot
I
more than
thought
he
that
lets on. Yeah.
exactly. No, I thought that was a perfect take to put with his character. But again, also the casting was a stroke of genius because again, you take someone who typically wouldn't play a a good guy, a virtuous
Mhm.
individual, and I think John really. I mean, he was one of my favorite parts of the whole film.
Mhm.
He's just so charming and he's noble and he's just we said it, he's a loyal guy, and he
Yeah.
brings that to bear time and time again.
Yeah. All the way through the end, and he was just so much fun to see because again, having seen him for, almost his entire career, I'm sitting there having flashbacks to him and Romeo plus Juliet and he's,
Yeah.
waving guns around, but he's awesome in that. And then in something like Summer of Sam, which is a
Yep.
tremendous performance. And even little stuff he's done, and wacky stuff he's done. He can be so many things, but this was such a neat character to get to inhabit, and he just disappears in it. I mean, I think that's the thing is that Nolan found all these character actors, and sometimes that's used as a pejorative, but I don't think it is at all. He
No,
found all these character actors and just let them go to town. And as he says it, like I write scripts, but we find it, in the reading and the rehearsals, we find the thing.
right.
You do your part, I'll do my part, and we'll meet in the middle with it. And he's not faster and more intense as a director, but he's also not every word hanging in there. He's got a lot more Scorsese to him in the way he directs actors, I think, as he lets them process through these things and figure this stuff out together.
Oh no, I mean again, you hear the stories that he is just he's truly an actor's director. I mean, I think it was Samantha Morton who was talking about her work with him, and she was only on set for a handful of days, but she said it was just the most rewarding experience because sometimes a director will be, way up there on the mountain, so to speak, calling down, but he's right there, like, all right,
Yeah.
we're gonna get through this, and how would you navigate? And I think that's the best way to let the
Yeah.
chemistry fly, if you will.
Well, and I mean, he famously has that whole, no chairs, no cell phones on set, so you have to talk to each other in the
Right.
breaks. So it builds camaraderie, or at least you just get to know the person. So if you've got to be antagonistic toward them, you can find those places to do that. And Damon was talking about they were looking at the horse, and they're going to shoot that, and he says, I look at him and go, how are we going to do that? And he said, I don't know, we're going to figure it out. And him and Hoyte just went in there and figured it out, in the day. And they still, that's the thing about this is we should say, and Nolan's done this his whole career. This movie came in under budget and early.
What else is new? I
And
mean,
when you
literally.
saw it, you're
No,
like,
it's amazing.
how did you do that? And it wasn't because it was rehearsed to death.
No.
It's just, art finds its way through with him. And again, I think he lets people come and do their things. Maybe, and we'll get around to Samantha Morton in just a sec, but
Yeah.
I do want to talk about Calypso and what Charlize
Oh yeah.
Theron gets to
Yep.
do. Um, because she's supposed to represent like the ultimate escape, you know.
Temptation.
Yeah, the easy,
Yep.
you can
Yep.
just rest, good soldier. You've done your job,
Right. Enjoy the lotus flower.
Right, right. And he could. I mean, as if it would take lotus flowers to want to live your life on an island with Charlize
No.
Theron. Let's all hold on a minute now.
Yeah.
But really, like, but the way I love how she plays it is not overly sensualized, if that makes sense. Because she very well could,
Oh,
but she doesn't. It's reserved.
this again was another great change from the poem because Calypso was much more antagonistic. She's
Mhm.
much more of, now, I don't want to say she's Annie Wilkes, but there's definitely a more of a hostage taker
I
in
I have
some
you
ways.
now. I'm not going to let you go. Yeah.
Right. And,
Mhm.
and in many ways, the way Charlize portrays her, she's almost like a therapist
Yeah.
in a lot of ways, which I think, that we can sort of get into the whole commentary on PTSD and sort of the fogs of war. But I like that it's not an overly sensual performance. Like in many ways, I mean, you've cast Charlize Theron. I mean,
Mhm.
it kind of speaks for itself right there.
Mhm.
And she takes the rest of it in a very restrained kind of manner where it's much more her giving a little bit, but then it's really Damon who's doing all of the kind of the delivery, if you will, or sort of the reacting to the situation.
Is she in some ways like the more calm version of Gene Tatlock to Odysseus's Oppenheimer?
That's actually I hadn't thought about that, but no, I could, yes, yes,
Yeah.
the much calmer versions,
Yeah, much calm, but it's still the same
more
idea
stable. But yeah,
of
no,
of
she's
that temptation,
the
you know.
temptation, the
Hmm.
the escape, the easy life,
Hmm.
all of that. Yeah, yeah, I would agree. I would agree.
That hit me the second time watching this. I was like, I feel like Charlize is doing like when Florence Pugh was doing the calm, reassuring, almost weaving him into the web parts of Oppenheimer. Like she's sort of doing that a little bit. I don't know if she thought about that or not, but it came off in the performance. Um, Part of that is I just rewatched Oppenheimer not that long ago either, so
No,
it's
well,
on
no,
the brain. But
this is such a great companion piece. I
mhm.
mean, like you want to talk about a double feature, watch Oppenheimer and the Odyssey,
Yeah.
and not just because it's Nolan. I mean,
Oh, I would
the
challenge you to do the thread that you do. You do. Tenet, Oppenheimer, the Odyssey, and maybe in the reverse
In
order.
reverse, yeah, that's
Yeah,
right.
because then they're in historical order if you want to go that way.
That's
But
right. That's
throw Dunkirk in there if you want to.
yeah.
But
If you want to, for
we got to talk about Samantha Morton and Cersei. Okay, when I saw this the first time, I knew the story and I remembered it, and on the
yeah,
page in the poem, I don't know that it came through how outright horrific that is. And it watching it the first time, I was just blown away. Like Nolan decided I'm going to make a straight up horror movie for about 8 minutes, and it's going to be the scariest body horror movie you've ever seen.
yep.
Yeah.
I, I again, I remember seeing an early reaction where someone said, "Oh, the pig sequence is nightmare
Oh.
fuel," and you're right because the story it's very. I don't want to say it leaves more to the imagination, but it's not as explicit as what we see
Oh.
in this film, and I think that was a great stylistic choice
Hmm.
on Nolan's part because this film it really does sort of flirt with the fantasy elements in a way,
Hmm.
but always sort of keeps like one foot there, one foot in a grounded reality.
Yeah.
Here is where I felt like Nolan was like, you know, F it kind of a thing, and just go for it. And I think the film is enhanced by
Oh.
that choice.
Yeah, 1,000%. I mean, it hit me the second time around again watching it because again in the page it doesn't always come through, necessarily. But when you're watching it the second time around and you realize they're walking by all these lions and tigers and they're not doing anything,
Yeah,
and I'm like, how do you do that? How's that working out, for you? And I realized like later I was like, oh, these are all soldiers
yeah,
that are
or who?
wanderers
Yeah,
who have come across there and they have no reason to attack. And then when you watch Odysseus kill the deer and it
the deer.
becomes a man, it's like oh it's all very obvious. But I love that stylistic choice and I love what she says is that she sees through Odysseus and through these men in particular more than they'll ever admit. She is
Oh
the
yeah,
mirror to what they really are, and she is the comeuppance for 10 years of barbarism,
bingo.
you know.
You look at what happened with Troy, you look at when
Mhm.
they arrive on that island with the houses all
Mhm.
set aflame. Like this is the chickens coming home to roost, if it were, as it were. And it's yeah,
And
it's we talk about from a pure horror standpoint. I mean, this is clearly
mhm.
Nolan flexing those genre tropes, but it is really a statement on war itself and
Mhm.
really the stuff that kind of we in polite society don't wish to talk about or
Oh.
even acknowledge its existence. And
Hmm.
she's there kind of with a megaphone saying, "Nope,
Yeah.
pay attention here, guys, because this is the brutal reality and the truth you're
And
going to have to face."
and inside of that though, also being very flawed and being this super manipulative, controlling
Oh,
person
sure.
because the face off she has with Odysseus when she's got the knife at his throat and he's got his hand on that bird,
On the-
going, "Is this a daughter? And this is a son? This is a mother? It's a sister." And he
Yeah.
figures it out. Like he goes down and like, "You can kill me, but this is going down too." And then the last thing he says is like, "Why do you keep her like this? We get along better this way." I was like,
Yeah.
"Oh."
Okay, this is a dark woman here. This
Very
no.
dark. Yeah, I'm like,
Yeah.
I kind of want the Cersei
I know,
movie.
seriously. No, I mean, if you want a
So
spin-off, there's your film.
yeah, and I mean, and I really know Samantha Morton from Minority Report, and while that's a movie that I still have a complicated relationship with, she's incredible in it as the
Oh yeah.
precog Agatha, and every time I rewatch that or re-see that, I think about her, and then to see her, and this when she popped up, it was the eyes immediately. I was like, ah, I know you, and then to watch what she does to those men, it's again, it's great pieces of practical effects. As we could talk all day about that, but it's all happening in real time and great music too. Ludwig Göransson is
Oh,
in his bag with all his. I love his whole like, well, I can't use a real orchestra, so I got to recreate instruments that don't exist anymore.
right.
Well, okay, I mean, if you want to,
Challenge accepted.
or just take the Yamaha keyboard, bro. But the fact that he doesn't and still creates all that tension with that minimalist thing,
Yeah.
like, you'll never not get a minimalist score over to me because I'm a Halloween and John Carpenter fan, for goodness sakes. I mean, this is, that's the king of that. But yeah, the Cersei scene is so, so good. And it's one of those that I'm like, when I have the opportunity to own this on home, I just want to watch that a few times and just sort
No,
of soak with it,
that's a great deep dive because there's so much going on there, to say nothing of, like we mentioned, the
Right.
practicality of it.
Yeah, yeah, just the fact that she's pulling all that off is what's amazing. So, I think we have to end up by talking about Zendaya and
Mhm.
Athena. And I want to know when you caught it, why she was the visage that she was. It took the second time for me.
No, so that was a second viewing, but it was a nice payoff because you really see, again, this was a great deviation from the story where,
Hmm.
yes, she's coming to him as Athena, but it really is the manifestation of not just this poor innocent woman from
Hmm.
Troy, but all the countless lives that were
Right.
taken, all of the guilt, all of the remorse.
Hmm.
And again, Zendaya has very little dialogue again, but when she speaks, you listen and you pay attention.
Hmm.
But in that final moment where, of course, it does pay off with, the chopping of the statue's head and then them reaching out and touching hands. I mean, that is about as a profound political statement as I have ever seen
Hmm.
from any Nolan film. I mean, that that
Yeah.
is that is a treatise right there in that entire sequence. I mean, just say nothing of the way it
It,
is shot, which is a masterclass, but just the payoff and realization that, oh my God, this actually was this is the burden of guilt that he has been
Mhm.
carrying around for 10 plus years.
You're gonna like this. It's the payoff of what Tiny Lister does in the climax of The Dark Knight when he says, "Give me that trigger, and I'll do what you should have done 10 minutes ago," and that's throw it, and he throws it out the window.
Yep.
It's like the most evil. So the Trojans are the most evil people on earth. We're gonna slaughter them because by God, we've been waiting 10 years for this. I mean, he even says it. Odyssey says it. Like we unleashed 10 years of rage on those
Yep.
people in that city, and that manifests in we grabbed this pretty girl, stretched her out four ways, and cut her head off.
Yep.
And the only way he can compartmentalize it is, well, we cut the statue's head off.
Yep.
And Athena plays such a big role in the poem, and
Oh
and
yeah.
she's I mean the reason Odysseus lives is because she cares a lot about him,
Yep.
and she goes to bat for him when the others won't, and kind of runs interference from Poseidon for him and a lot of other
Yep.
people. And you feel like that is still here and happening without it being so overt. Because again, we've talked about the gods are over here doing their thing, but we're not really going to show you any of that. And the fact that the only way he can process it in his own head is to have these conversations with her,
Yep.
and I liken it again to some, and I'm not trying to compare the two people here, so please hear me carefully on this. It's the likening of the sometimes of when you would read about the early disciples who were building
Mm,
the church would think about, the conversations, the casual time they would spend with Christ on the road,
right.
you know, as a way of finding peace with it. And so for him, Athena is peace. So he has these convos with her, in his head. Again, when that revealed, I was like, now that is visual storytelling
Yeah. No,
to a degree.
and I'm glad that she was never represented in the earlier moments in sort of the traditional
Mhm.
godlike
Yeah.
presentation. I mean, that's again where I think this film succeeds, where other adaptations have not. This is not some Technicolor stage play.
Mhm.
This is a brutal, gritty, lived-in world.
Yeah.
And I think that allows for much more accessibility
Mhm.
compared to, people walking around in garish costumes and large set pieces. I mean, there's a
Mhm.
time and a place for that, but I think especially when you're trying to arrive at a bigger point,
Mhm.
you have to go for that realistic take, if you will. Again, sort of
Right.
to tie it to Batman, it's sort of like what he did with those larger than life characters by putting them in
Mhm.
our world, if you will.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And that's a again, it's one of the reasons where I'm like, well, if and I know he made the joke that he took his Oscars out of his office because they were making him nervous, and his kid said, "Well, you didn't win any for writing anything." That's Uncle Jonathan, and I'm like,
Kids, keep you humble.
touche, kid. But if he is nominated, and I think he will be for adapt, adapted screenplay, it'll be for a choice like that,
Yeah, agreed.
and that's going to be hard to contextualize in some way, but people that watch this, I think will get it and see that. This movie's about Odysseus making choices in a lot of ways, right?
Yeah,
And if you had to think of just one choice that he makes that you think really typifies who he is, which one is it?
that's an interesting one. I think it really, we see it in the symbolism when he plucks his bow, that
Hmm.
he still, whether he's hunting or whether he's enacting vengeance, he is still going to fight with some kind of honor. And I think that mentality coupled with the choice that he ultimately makes at the end of the story that begins back in Hades, that he is
Hmm.
going to go westward and he is going to honor his fallen men and sort of right the wrongs, if you will.
Hmm.
I think that really speaks to who this guy is. And I think if we want to look at, does he quote learn anything? It really is exemplified in that final decision that he makes. That yeah, we're obviously I'm being exiled, but
Hmm.
I'm going to do so with purpose and clarity.
I picked the same moment too, and it's for something you said there. It's that whole fighting with honor
Hmm.
thing. And he has that whole conversation with Eumaeus early on. He's like, "Why
Mm,
do you give them a thing?" Well, it's good sport. He's like, "But they're not fighting you." Well, I'm fighting them,
right.
so
Same.
it's
It's
only
the same
fair.
thing. Yeah.
It's only fair to give them a shot. And I like the idea that he made up his mind that the only thing I can do is make sure Telemachus has a clear line to the throne
Right.
here, and that he doesn't have blood on his hands doing it.
Yep.
You know, so I'm going to get them all in my hands.
Yeah.
One, I got to put the house in order. Two, Penelope's really itching for me to put this house in order because she's tired of these fools too. So, um, and so that's his I ain't wearing hockey pads moment,
Right.
and
Yeah.
it's a great and I'm going to say this now. Go ahead and mail Jennifer Lane, the editor, and Ludwig Göransson their Oscars for the one scene where he plucks that bow and it's in time and tune with the score. I'm
Yep.
like, show that, mail them the trophies.
That's it. It's over.
I don't care if
Yep.
this movie wins anything else, and I think it will. But if it
Yeah.
doesn't, it's got to win for those two things, just for that, because that is so well done. The first time I saw it, I was like, "Oh, that sounded cool," and then the second time, I was like,
Oh,
"Not
it
only did it
hits.
sound cool and look cool, it was cool."
Yep.
And it was the moment when you knew, "Oh, it's on."
Yep.
I mean, it's totally
Things are going down in Ithaca tonight.
yes. It is about to get. It's about to get John Wick in the
Yeah.
Bronze Age here.
Yeah.
And I loved it. I love the way that that whole sequence goes down. But it's that moment is there, and I think it's also in the choice when John Barenthal's Menelaus is the one that tells Telemachus, if you kill all these people, then you
The
can't
Bloods.
take the
Yeah.
throne. You violated Zeus's law. And in sense, telling him like, if Odysseus comes back, he'll do it, and then you'll be ready
Right.
for it. And I think in some way he's telling him, and if he doesn't give me a call, I'll come do it.
Right.
Like he don't care, So, but because he's he
Yeah.
got what he wanted back, as we know. And I don't know, I just love that whole moment because again it pays off so much, and it just tells you who he really is. He is a lot of things, a very
Oh
complex
yeah.
character, but you understand that like his plan was never to come back and sit on that throne in Ithaca.
No.
He was coming back to get Penelope to make sure his son was ready, and then he was gone,
Yeah.
you know. And this was the time. And especially when he saw it. I mean, the way that they set, way Antonius sets up Telemax and he gets out of it, because again he's a smart kid.
Yeah.
He's his mom and dad's kid. He's got a
Yeah.
little bit of both of them, and he's got some good help around him too. So
Oh
let's give
yeah.
mentor and group credit. But the way that he sees that, like, oh, it's just as bad as I thought it was going to be. In fact, it's worse. So, all right, fine then. And they do build in like a real personalized reason for him to go after Robert Pattinson's character, and I think that's cool. We won't spoil everything tonight,
No,
I
no.
guess, but because that is something that's unique to this film, and I think it's fun. And is a great. I mean, for a character that you're just waiting for him to get it.
Yes.
You're like, then yeah, he earns that. He earns every second of that death that he gets. But 20 years from now,
Hmm.
because we're almost 20 years from The Dark Knight and we talk about
Yeah.
that movie all the time. So 20 years from now, what scene will people still be talking about, Phil? I think it's the bow scene at the end, but it
I
could be 100 different ones.
I think the bow scene will go down as one of the great final acts of all time. And I don't think I'm being hyperbolic saying that. I think it pays off with tremendous flourish.
Hmm.
And it's also just it's a very cool
It
sequence.
is, yeah.
But other points in the film, I think the Cersei scene that whole sequence will be talked about. I mean, I think the whole film will honestly be looked at and studied in film school. Like if I was teaching a high school course on the Odyssey, I would show this film. I
Hmm.
think it is that important as an adaptation. And then I think also another scene that will get a lot of traction, particularly when this film is released on home media, is the Hades sequence. I think
Hmm.
that right there is another point
Yeah.
where people are going to sort of point to. I mean, A, it looks amazing, but
Yeah.
there's so much depth and thematic resonance in those scenes and
Yeah.
and exchanges that you just can't help but be in awe
Yeah.
of it all.
That's some of the most memorable stuff of the poem too. There's
Exactly.
several
Going into
conversations we don't
Hades.
even get, particularly the Achilles one, where he says, "I'd give anything to just be a servant in the lowest kingdom than to
Right.
have to do this any day." And that's, there's biblical root to that as well. I think the siren scene and the
Oh,
speech afterward is going to be one that people really do talk about. This is how you do a moment of levity and emotional weight in an action movie.
yeah, that's
It
a
can be
good
done a
point.
lot of different ways, but it's particularly if you're doing anything that's quote historical, and I use that loosely here because this is
Right.
a fable.
Yeah.
Let's not get too lost in the costumes, children. It may not have ever happened, and it most certainly did not happen the way that we know it.
No, I don't think
But
so.
but
I haven't seen any
but
Cyclops running around
Right,
lately,
but
so
that's the fun of it
yeah.
too, is the building of the tale. I
Oh yeah.
talk about my friend Brian and I do the show Main Event Maniacs for the Juice Box, the wrestling podcast, and we go back and look at these old main events, and some of them were at a time when we really played up the mythical conquest of what was happening. It's ridiculous, but at the time, the weight felt the same, and you could see how they played it. They even dressed like gladiators sometimes,
Right.
and you see all that, it's I think from the movie Gladiator, like, are you
Oh
not
yeah.
entertained is
Right.
something that people will always remember. Maybe the scene people will always remember from that. This one's got a few of those, but I feel like that siren scene
Mm,
and the way it ends too, and again, it's another great piece of editing and sound design and stuff of we go deaf too. We are now
right.
part of the crew. We don't get to hear it either.
Right.
That's something that's only Odysseus's. And I love that's just something only he gets.
And that was a great choice because again,
And it's
someone
mhm.
maybe a lesser director would have probably told us what was going on.
Yeah, you've seen it. I mean, because that's part of the deal with the sirens. If you survive, they die.
Yeah.
Well, we never even really see them, and
No, which again I think was another good choice.
yeah, you don't need to. It's we can talk a lot about that. I guess we do need to get a little bit on the production design. We've both praised the editor and the cinematographer and the person in charge of the music direction and all of that. It all just really comes together. But I love how lived in all this feels.
Thank you. Yes.
Yeah, it's not. I mean, I went back and rewatched Troy the other night because I was like, it's been a long time. I saw it in theaters when it came out. Let's go revisit that. And it is a beautiful looking movie.
It
It is
is. It
gorgeous,
is.
but in no time does it look like even when they look dirty, they don't look dirty.
No,
Yeah.
it's too pristine. That's sort of what I
Mhm.
meant with that comment about a Technicolor stage play. Like
Mhm.
it's just so many of these sword and sandal films tend to look like they were pristine cost. Like it looks like they came right out of central casting.
Hmm.
Everything looks like it was made 2 days before.
Yeah.
That's not the case here. It's again that lived in reality. It's brutal. It's unpleasant at times. It's it's a world. It's a lived
Hmm.
in world, and I think that gives us such credence and believability
Hmm.
as opposed to if it was just, oh yeah, well it's
Well,
really pretty, but it's
Ridley Scott used that in Alien, the
yeah.
used future.
Yeah.
The
No,
idea that these are space truckers, and it would look like a truck. And it
no,
would
yeah,
look.
it goes all the way back to the first Star Wars film.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's a used future. It's something that and to Lucas's credit, the prequels looked incredibly pristine because we weren't at a time of the Empire and the war, at
Exactly.
least the couple planets we saw. So I love that idea. I feel like this is people will call this the Game of Thronesing of Sword and Sandal movies, but it goes back further than that. You can give John Milius credit for this, for the original Conan the Barbarian, because as pretty as some of that movie is, and it is
It's
gorgeous, it is a very used, livable place, and it's
gritty,
harsh.
grimy. Yes.
Yeah, it's
Yep.
harsh. I mean, they go in there and kill the snakes, and it's gory. And
Yep.
this is it's because it's Nolan. He just doesn't do the Cersei scenes the goriest thing he's probably ever done. This could have been a lot of bloodier movie if he wanted it
Oh,
to
if he
be.
wanted to,
He
absolutely.
just chose not to, and I think it's smart to not to. But I mean, I wouldn't have blamed him if he did it. So
Oh no, I totally could see how you would want to go there, but at the same time, I think, I mean, they accomplish a lot with the R rating here, and I
they
get
do.
it. Like, at some point, it's always best to leave a little bit to the imagination.
Yeah, exactly. And if Nolan took any cues from that modern translation idea, it was that I'm going to use just everyday language for people. And
Which was
I'm going to make
smart.
my two Brits talk like Americans because it doesn't make sense for them to sound different than Odysseus, And so rather than have him and everybody else try to catch up to their accents, they're both pretty good at American accents, so
Yeah,
we're just going to let them do it. And it was a great choice. So, I
it
mean, he could have just
was.
let them all be natural too, and I wouldn't have thought anything of it.
Oh no.
But the fact that he does have these two serious Brits,
Yeah.
in Pattinson and Tom Holland, just talking like they're from Minnesota or
Right.
from Kansas or whatever. It works. It totally works. And that serves this movie in such a unique way because, and I think what I've heard Nolan say about it, and I completely agree with this, is like if you're already going to see things that don't look like anything you have any relation to, other than the movies, right?
Right.
Sword and sandals and stuff like that. We don't roll around like that unless you just go to the Ren Fair every day, and nobody does. So only so many turkey legs you can eat, right? Or do that, right? We don't do that, right? So you're
No.
already taken out by that. Why take it out by language you don't know? And this is a worldwide movie, so who knows what the dubbing sounds like in other countries. But in the English speaking world, they just kind of sound like Americans, and I don't think anybody's going to blink twice about it. They're
No,
thinking about it.
I think it was such an asinine criticism that people were hurling at this movie. The
This
use of,
movie has a litany of
oh,
those.
we could do a whole episode on that nonsense.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I think that was a great choice because it also gets back to that point of accessibility
Hmm.
and tying this story that is, of course, 3,000 years old, but bringing it into a modern context and
Yeah.
making it applicable to our place and time, I think was again, it's only going to enhance this film as it ages.
Yeah, it's only going to make it just, yeah, I mean, again, having seen it twice, I got so much more from it the second time. I know I will the next time I see it, all of that. So I've got two closing questions for you.
Yeah.
What conversation do you think Nolan wants people to have on their drive home?
So one of the things I love about Nolan is that he is not the type of director to preach.
Mm,
He in many ways he has tremendous faith in the audience to discern what it is he may be trying to get at. He's never going to validate or invalidate necessarily because I think he'd much rather keep an even hand on the tiller, if you will, than
mm,
to sort of say, well, no, this is the correct interpretation, or that's what you should be looking at. Some directors have to almost like spoon feed you
Hmm.
what it is they're getting at. But I would imagine just, I mean, we just take the whole sacking of Troy and we see it in three distinct points of view. And I think the most effect, of course, is what we get from Odysseus. If anything, this is Nolan's darkest film, and that's maybe saying something when you consider some of the other movies, even the one that just preceded it with Oppenheimer.
Hmm.
But I think this is really his statement, if you will, on humanity, on kind of where we have gone so wrong, how we have gone so
Hmm.
far off course, and it goes beyond just saying, oh, it's an anti-war film, because I think Nolan is not going to be that sort of bumper sticker
Hmm.
like with his messaging. I think this is much more a commentary on sort of the history of violence, and sort of violence begets violence, and then ultimately, these cycles will inevitably continue because lessons are never learned, or people learn the wrong lessons,
Hmm.
if you will. And so I think that there's definitely a bleak statement as it relates to the future of mankind, but at the same time, I do think there is that inherent hopefulness that is, I think even in some of Nolan's maybe more dire endings. There's always a feeling that maybe it can get better. Maybe
Hmm.
the next generation will learn the proper lessons, or maybe we'll return to a better time and place. I mean, it's in some ways it's almost contradictory. Despair on one hand and hope on the other, but uh, it's
Well,
I think it's a wonderful marriage, if you will, that kind of speaks to the contradictions that is human nature.
it is our cycle,
Yeah,
to do those things, and we do that. I mean, even the end of this movie, he and Penelope are sailing off, and she says like, "Civilization will rise again. Like this is the end of our age.
right.
Our son's going to have a very different life than we did, but it'll come back. It
Yeah,
always does. Why? Because it has to. If it gets dark, it has to get light.
that's
And
right.
that's what faith is, right? You believe in that. I'm going to borrow a line from uh, my friend Jennifer Wesley, who wrote this in a poem um, of her own some 21 years ago, I guess now at this point, or somewhere along in there, and about a very different subject matter. And I'm not going to get into all that now, but she wrote a stanza that said, "This is not the contrived endings of men from concession stand wisdom." And I thought I understood what that meant for years.
Hmm.
And watching this movie, for some reason, that popped in my head again. And I thought,
That's a
wow,
great line.
it's a I mean, it's a killer line. And and I've made it a point. I'm like, I have to reach out and let her know that, like, I don't know if you've seen the Odyssey or not, but it's the thing that you wrote that you probably don't remember, but I did. And it hit me because I was like, no, this is exactly what that is about.
Hmm.
That idea that it's not, it is about, you know, can we stop learning the wrong lesson and do it right the next time, And it's what's so fascinating about this story and the way that Nolan chooses to end it. The standard way at the end is the king comes back, he clears the house and gets on the throne and go to town. And no, this one's like, nah, time to sew up the wounds and get on a boat and do what they do at the end of Star Trek Six. Start of the left, hit it, and I love that idea.
And I love that the final image is of the horse.
Yeah.
I think that was again another great stylistic choice. That again, it's it's more than just about
Hmm.
the literal horse. That's
Yeah.
which is, I mean, again, it's beautiful imagery, but
Well, it's
it's
the
much deeper.
contradiction.
Yeah,
We want to root for Odysseus, but he himself doesn't like violating Zeus's law, but his greatest victory was an entire violation of
finally,
Zeus's law.
yeah.
You know, we give you a gift, but it's going to kill
It's yeah.
you.
No,
Because
I know. I mean, not unlike
why?
Oppenheimer.
Because I've been here for 10 years and you deserve to die.
Right.
That's it. Well, Oppenheimer, yeah,
Yeah.
well, which is, we can get into, Jurassic Park and Michael Crichton.
Yeah.
We were real caught up in whether or not we could,
Yeah.
for a long time. Should we have? I don't know. And I mean that's the debate, and I think
Yeah.
that's what's fascinating. Well, I mean that's even in Tenet. The
Yeah.
protagonist is going like, do you have to go and do that, Neil? Yeah, but it's okay. We have a good time. I mean, like and I'm like, I want to see that good time. By the way, please
I
make a sequel
I'm with you.
or a prequel or whatever it would
Prequel,
be.
sequel, whatever you want
I
to
don't know
call it.
what it would be in the
It's
Tenet
almost like
world,
it's a
but
combination of the two.
it really is at the same time. So, all right. So, I was going to ask this, like, is this destined to be remembered as one of Nolan's, defining films? But I'm going to do it a different way.
Okay.
Where's this rank
Oh,
for you in the Nolan filmography? I know it's only a week later, less than that, so I'm trying not to get too over that. But we both have watched this. You've watched it 3 times.
three
I've seen it
times.
twice.
Yep.
We've sat with it and thought about it a lot. So where do you put it in the parlance of
So
Nolan?
I have no hesitation in saying it. It's a number two Nolan film for me, behind only The Dark Knight.
Okay.
I stand by. I've said it to you offline. I think this is one of the greatest films ever made. I'm not alone in that sentiment. Uh,
Hmm.
Film journalist Kevin McCarthy said it after seeing it twice. But this film is right up there with, you think of films like Lawrence of Arabia,
Yeah.
Ben-Hur, Ten Commandments, even. This is a monumental film, and I again, I go back to that point I made earlier about The Dark Knight. This was such an emotional experience for me watching this film,
Mhm.
and just being overwhelmed in the best possible way by the weight and magnitude of it. It really did feel like, okay, I finally caught that 18-year high that I have been searching for since July 18th, 2008. So to me, I knew it was going to end up very close near the top just after one viewing, but
Mhm.
after viewing two and three, I'm like, yeah, no, this I can understand if someone says Oppenheimer is his magnum opus, but I would almost say when you look at what this film is in its totality, this may end up being what he is ultimately remembered for, and that is
Mhm.
saying something in a career that has
Yeah.
included a roster of phenomenal films. Where's it for you?
Whew. So if you know me at all, my number one film is for Nolan is Tenet. Followed very closely by Inception. I've talked about that,
Hmm.
and sometimes I can flip them with each other, but I feel like Inception is the less mature version of Tenet.
Hmm.
Inception is, I want to do Bond, so here's my Bond reel. And then Tenet is, you won't let me do Bond, so I'm going to do the coolest, smartest, most complicated Bond ever. And I will stand for Tenet till the day is long.
Yeah,
Yeah. And that's held that one spot for me a long time.
yeah.
And I think I texted you after I saw it the first time. I said, buddy, it's ranking in at 3, and I really mean like 2, because you know what 1A and 1B are.
Yep.
And I thought, well, do I really mean that? Do I really mean that? And I sat and I thought about that, and I was like, no, I do. I mean, this
Yep.
is it's a technical marvel.
Yep.
Everybody brought their A game. The acting is impeccable. There's not a single person I would recast in any of this.
No.
In fact, there's some of them I want to see their own movie in, and all that
Right.
kind of stuff. I'm all about this. That tells you, like, no, this works. It's Nolan doing all the Nolan things, you know, but with the maturity of 12 films in his bag.
Correct.
And so when I thought about that, I said, oh, that means it's got to take over something.
Hmm.
And it's taken over a bunch of other films that I like, but I think I got to bump it up. So I bumped it up to 2 the same night. And I was like, all right, I feel comfortable with 2. If 2 feels good.
Yeah.
And I watched it again, and I walked out of there and I picked up my phone and I went to Letterboxd, as one does, as we do.
As we do, I know.
And I went to my order of films and I just slid it over for a second. I just want to look at that for a second. I just want to look at that. And then I put my phone away. I thought about that. And then I texted with you, and a few other friends. And then I looked at it again that night before I went to bed. And I said, no, I think I'm going to hit save on that. I think it's the best thing he's ever done,
Damn.
Phil. I really do. And I say this as someone who will line up and watch the man direct the phone book at
Right.
some point.
Yeah.
I just want him to do like a musical now. Like just do something
Seriously.
goofy, something small, like kind of redo the pajama game, or something. Talk about a whiplash. But
Seriously.
I say that as something like, yeah, how can I justify putting Tenet is a favorite. I
Oh,
also
sure.
think it is brilliant, and I'm so happy it's getting its due reevaluation
By
now.
the end of the decade,
People are
people
already coming
will.
around to go like, no, that movie kind of
No, they get
bombed.
it. It
Yeah,
took a long time,
this movie kind of, well, but as it was supposed to, it was
Hey,
meant
that's
to
right. It
do that.
wasn't. That's right.
Yeah, but I say that to say like, how can he ever top it? And I said, you know what? I don't even care if he wants to or tries. I don't need him to because that if he never makes anything along the line of that again, it'll still be incredibly watchable and fun.
Yep.
I know that, but I have seen something I didn't think we were capable of making movies like this anymore.
Yep.
I knew we could do the stylistic things that he chooses to do with the practicals and all that stuff. That he's proven that 100 times or 12 or 13 now, I guess. So I knew that, but could it all culminate into something that is actual greatness and where every generation can watch it and pull a,
Hmm.
something from it? That is greatness.
Oh,
And to me, that's why I'm like, you know what? No, I don't think I'm gassing this up or anything like that. It's the best Nolan film, and it's tremendous how how good it is, and I
hmm.
can't wait to get my hands on it again. I kind of went sparse on everything leading up to it after I knew just enough,
Right.
to get me by, and I kind of like that. I call that the Brock method. Shout out to my buddy Brock from Now Playing, who does that with every movie. And I wish I had that kind of discipline, but
Yeah. I
sometimes
know.
I have to know some things.
Yeah.
But the nature of podcasting. But
Right.
we weren't even going to do a show on the Odyssey. This came out of the fact that like I have to talk about this,
Yes.
and that to me said like, okay, that says a lot. That like when I saw Tenet, I was like, yeah, eventually I might do a show on that, one day. But I lived with that movie and watched it over and over and just really got into it, and that kind of stuff. And Inception was the same way. This one though, I'm like, man, it just makes sense that it fits in that spot. It's like the team that has been real close for a lot, and maybe they've even won a couple of them, but then you watch the greatest version of themselves get out there and just lay waste in front of you. And it's like, you know what? I'm just gonna go watch that again. It's like the greatest thing I've ever seen. It's one of the greatest things I've ever seen. It really is. And I say it not only is it's my top Nolan film. It's cracked the top four for me, Phil, which my top four films up until this were Jaws, 1978, Halloween, Heat from Michael Mann, and 2001: A Space Odyssey.
A decent list right there.
It's a pretty strong list,
Right. No, yes.
I would say. Um, but what did I move off of that list to make it work? I had to I had to drop Heat to five for
Okay.
myself, which is another big revelation here.
Wow,
For
we're dropping
Yeah,
truths here
we're
tonight.
dropping it out. But really, it
No,
is
it speaks to the film.
it
It really
does. And I'm
does.
like, you know what though? As much as I love Heat, and I do, and I will always love that movie. Um, but I I'm like, no, this is better, and I like it more, and I like it for some of the same reasons, the complicated characters, and all the stuff and the way it works. Um, but like when Heat ends, I'm ready for it to end. I'm ready when Neil and Vince are
Yeah.
shaking hands, and it's the the Warriors goodbye there at the end in the airport. I'm ready for it to end. I kind of wanted to sail over the horizon a little bit with these two. I wanted to see what happens. I wanted to check back in on the kid and see what he had going on. I was that into it. You know.
Oh no, I'm with you in that sense. I mean, I no one doesn't do it, obviously, but if ever there was a time for a director's extended edition, I mean, and I don't think
Hmm.
there's probably was much that was put on the cutting room floor outside of a few probably
Hmm.
editorial choices just to meet the runtime because of the IMAX projectors.
Hmm.
I could have easily spent another hour with this
Yeah.
film. Easily another hour.
Hmm.
It is just that rich and engaging. I mean, like that's
Yeah.
someone put a gun to my head. Okay, what's your criticism? That's it. I would have taken more of this. Like
Yeah.
that. That's
I
like
mean,
that's
it's,
always a sign of a good film when you don't want to
yeah.
leave.
I mean, the movie's listed at 2 hours and 53 minutes. It's really about 2:42. When you
Yeah,
cut all the credits
when
and
you cut the
everything
credits
out, it's
down.
which is a lot crammed into that. And again, it's the sign of a good film. And we've waxed ecstatic
Yeah.
about it for 90 minutes, and we could go another 90 hours, I think.
Yeah.
But again, as I said though, I was like, I have to talk about this, and there's only one person on earth I want to talk about it with, and it's Phil. So I hope I can convince him to do this because I know again you've had tremendous stuff. Your out of theater reaction was one of my favorite things to listen to at the end of last week. Your first blush on this, and I can't wait. And your Substack where you wrote about it, which I think the final count was around 4,200 words,
Yeah,
something
get
along
get
there.
around that, give or
Yeah,
take.
which is great though.
Yeah,
It's really well done, and I'm
thank
going
you.
to have you plug all that, and I'll put all that in the descriptions when
I
we're done
appreciate
here.
it.
But I knew I wanted to talk about it with you, so thank you for coming along for this ride and just geeking out about the Odyssey with me tonight, my friend.
Well, likewise, buddy, because there was no one I'd rather go on an Odyssey with than you. This was a fantastic discussion. So thank you, my friend. Honestly, this was again, this is the film you have to talk about. And
Yeah.
I've been probably bothering everybody for the last 4 or 5 days since I saw it, and I'm still not ready to to
Mhm.
shut up about it. So, fair warning, everyone.
That is totally fair. So do tell people how they can find your stuff, everything going on at Phil at the Movies, and all the other fun things you got going on besides Nolan stuff. So you
Right.
got a big catalog. So
Yeah, no, just a little bit. Well, again, Jay, thank you. Always fun to collaborate. Yeah, Phil at the Movies, new episodes each and every Friday. Actually, do a plug. You'll be on this Friday's episode as
Mhm.
part of the Flashback Friday series, where we're discussing Stanley Kubrick's last film, Eyes Wide Shut. So
Ah,
that's a fun discussion. Been waiting for that for a while. But other than that, it'll be a lot of upcoming films. Actually, you're going to be part of another discussion with Two Girls, One Crypt for Obsession. That'll be coming sometime in August.
I can't
Uh,
wait for that.
yeah, that's
Yeah.
going to be a fun time. That's going to be a
Hmm.
fun time. We could do a whole discussion right now on
I,
that movie.
I thought I had seen my favorite movie of the year when I saw
I know.
Obsession
I remember
until this
no,
happened,
I
and then
know.
I was like,
Then
oh well,
no one showed up. Hold my beer.
yeah.
Yeah, no, seriously. But yeah, in addition to the podcast, I also do a weekly Substack, which in many ways is a lot more liberating in some cases
Hmm.
than the podcasting because I can really just sort of wax poetic about whatever it is that I happen to be writing about. So
Hmm.
again, would love for you to subscribe and listen to the podcast as well as to the Substack. And I promise not to clog up your inbox or go on for 2 hours at a time. But when needed, it will happen.
It's always worth your time, folks. I promise you. And again, we'll link all that in the show description
Thank
here.
you, Jay.
And absolutely, my friend, thank you for being a part of this. And if
You
you were
too.
joining us live tonight on YouTube, we don't do this very often, but hey, if you enjoyed it, leave us a comment. Go ahead and hit a follow and a like. We appreciate it. But if you want to watch this video, it'll be up there, forever. And then if you catch the audio of this, we'll get that out, around midweek or so, so you can enjoy Phil and I talking about this. Wherever you get Film Strip, wherever you get podcasts, you can find us Film Strip Podcast. This is episode 459 here. We've been going 16 years strong, and
Congrats.
thank you. I appreciate that. Lots more fun stuff to come from Ron and Lindsay and Ryan and myself, and our cavalcade of friends. We're coming out of the summer here, getting ready for fall. We've got some fun things planned for spooky season, as it were, and Sessions is our kind of general topic show or just our sort of grab bag show. Sometimes it is about a film or a filmmaker, and we've got something really fun planned for this this spooky season. I'm just going to leave it at that. I'll tease you with that because I've assembled a big team of podcast Avengers to help answer a question about a movie, and we'll tease you more about that as we come up. But again, you can find all of that wherever you find your fine podcasts, and of course, follow the show on social media at Film Strip Pod, wherever you find us, Facebook, X. Over on Instagram, and we'll eventually we'll get that letterbox thing updated too, where we put links to all of our shows. But do appreciate the support, and Phil, it's been great chatting with you, and good
Likewise, my friend.
Yeah, been a good time talking Odyssey with everybody. So have a great night, folks. We will talk to you again soon.